Hi again, Panther fans, and welcome to the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford inside Georgia State basketball. This is Dave Cohen, the radio voice of the Panthers. On this latest show, we're talking Georgia State basketball with head coach Jonas once again this week. We're going to recap the Panthers' recent win on the road at Louisiana with a shock the Ragin' Cajuns at the Cajun Dome, 78-69, as well as their recent home game victory over the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio in the Sun Belt MAC Challenge. Georgia State now 11-13 overall, 5-7 in Sun Belt Conference play. This week it's back on the road as the Panthers head to Harrisonburg, Virginia and Norfolk, Virginia, just like the old days in the Colonial Athletic Association. Back-to-back road games at James Madison and Old Dominion. We're back on the radio both nights on 50,000 watt 88.5 FM WRAS. So we'll talk to you from the road. Georgia State will be back at the GSU Convocation Center. They'll play the final four regular season games there starting February 21 when they host Coastal Carolina. Panther fans, basketball tickets available by calling the GSU ticket office 404-413-4020 or online at georgiastatesports.com. And as always, if you've missed any of our previous Panther Insider podcasts, they're all available on the Apple Archives page. You can access that online at georgiastatesports.com. In this first segment of the Panther Insider podcast, we're talking Panther basketball as we recap the most recent two games this past week. Again, a win on the road at Louisiana, a win at home against Miami of Ohio in the Sun Belt MAC Challenge. We welcome head basketball coach Jonas once again to the Panther radio microphones. I can't tell you how nice it is to come over here, sit in your office, and record this after two really nice wins. A great win on the road and a really good win here at home.
Thanks for having me again, Dave. It's much different when you can get a win on the road as we came together and got one at Louisiana. But then to follow that up with another outstanding effort. You know, I would say against Miami of Ohio, we probably played 35, 36 really, really intense and physical minutes. But to be able to back that up is kind of confirmation that this team is moving in the right direction. Again, now I go back to the word or the term I used early on is, can we be consistent in our effort regardless of who we playing and where we playing?
I've had coaches tell me in the past what you do in November is great. What you do in December, it's great. Same with January. But what you do in February when you start to peak, hopefully, is important.
It's absolutely important, especially for seeding, in our case, for our league tournament. And I do think for now it's been 4 games, and we're 2-2 on those 4 games. But largely we're moving in the right direction. It kind of got a sense of togetherness and cohesion. And we're going to keep showing up, man, and we're going to keep showing up regardless of what the situation calls for, regardless of who we play or where we play them. We're going to keep showing up and giving everything we have. We will be able to live with the results, all right, if you understand that you have got to be fair to the game, be fair with your effort, and I can live with the result if we take care of that piece.
You're in your second season at Georgia State. It's been a roller coaster ride this year, going all the way back. Some of those early games seemed like it was 6 months ago, even though it wasn't. In the middle, we had a 6-game winning streak, or 5 out of 6 in the win column, followed by a 6-game losing streak. Where do you hide your patience?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I hide it in the fact that I had no idea gray hair grow as fast as it does. But I try to remain the same. I never try to get too high when things are going well, and you never try to get too low when things are not. And really through adversity, my blood and my I guess my juice is starting to flow, trying to figure it out. And never one time feel sorry for yourselves, because you know there's somebody somewhere, some way, shape, or form got it a little bit worse than you. So I always try to stay level with our guys, whether we winning a few games in a row or we losing a few games in a row, to try to keep our focus on a singular goal, and that's just keep stepping forward. That's what I think courage is, when you don't get the result that you want on one day, but listen to your voice inside of you and say, you know what, I didn't have the result I had yesterday, but I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna try it again. And that's kind of sort of where we are.
They talk about players taking on the emotions of their coach, following the lead of the coach and the coaching staff. You've got, without naming any names, you've got a few kids on this team that do play with a lot of emotion, that they look to you for leadership, and not just X's and O's, but to see how you respond to certain things that are happening during the course of a game.
Yeah, and so I try to tell our guys, it's a good thing to play with emotion. That tells you got a lot of drive, you got a lot of competitive fire. It's a different scenario when you are emotional. All right, and so I want to keep our emotionalism under control. Play with emotion, play with that fire, that competitive nature that you have. But there's a line that shouldn't be crossed into becoming emotional. And so we do have a couple of guys that it's a work in progress. But I will always be the change I want to see. And so I know I got a technical foul a few weeks ago or whatever, and I try not to get to that point, but that goes to the point. I will fight for my guys, though, and I believe in them. I believe in the people we have on our staff. I believe in the guys we have in our locker room, and I really do believe the tables they're going to turn. We just have to make sure we're sitting at the table when they turn.
All right, time now to recap the most recent couple of games that Georgia State played in this past week. Again, Georgia State right now 11-13, 5-7, right there hovering in the middle of the Sun Belt Conference. With Appalachian State and Troy and James Madison right now sitting in the top three spots. Georgia State on Wednesday night had the pleasure of playing at the world-famous, as I call it, Cajun Dome in Lafayette. Been going there for a number of years. I personally think it might be the hardest, toughest arena to get out of with a win, even going back to the old R.J. Hunter, Ryan Harrow, Manny Atkins days when it would get really emotional in that building, speaking of the word emotional. This is a game that Louisiana jumps out early. I remember that we're up 14-4. We play the first half. You go into the locker room, Coach, down by 9 in that building, 39-30. What are you guys talking about in the locker room that leads to what ultimately happens in the second half?
Well, so I remember calling a timeout. I think the score got actually 18-4 or something like that, 18-4, something like that, and I called a timeout and got everybody together, and I wanted to keep my composure, and I just simply said early leads don't last, and I kept repeating, we got to keep showing up regardless, and the one thing we attacked at the halftime is it's just our aggression, our smart aggression, especially on the basketball, and I think our guys took hold of it, and we walked it down possession after possession after possession, and had a hell of a second half. And our guys, you could tell it, they start believing. They always believed, but it's a different level of belief when you can believe in something but also see the result. And so that kind of feeds itself. And that's where we are. And our guys, you'd be amazed at how they rallied around each other. And I'll be honest with you, we do not win that game if it not been for Big Ed. And the amount of selflessness he put his team and the opportunity to win over himself and put himself in position to be our game player of the game. And again, he is the emotional soul of our team. And the level of leadership he showed on Wednesday night was nothing short of amazing. And I'm truly grateful for him that he was able to make that decision for our team.
Yeah, we had the pleasure of talking to Ed on the post-game show on the radio, and he's averaging 3 points, 4 rebounds. I think he had, at the time going into that game, had 13 block shots. He's kind of settled into his role, but it was like all of a sudden in the second half Wednesday night, a light bulb went off, and he becomes a player that we haven't seen so far this season for the most part.
Yeah, and he is the definition of keep showing up. He's not the guy. His profile is not going out and get you 12 or 15, 16 points a night. But what he provides is unbelievably great energy. He can defend his position physically without fouling a lot of the times, and rebounding. And that's exactly what this team sorely needs. And to be able to provide that, I have a pyramid of success on my board, and at the very top of that deal, it says competitive greatness. And to be at your best when your best is needed. And we needed his best. And even when he wasn't physically, his ankle was the size of a grapefruit. And for him to find the intestinal fortitude to, number one, just play through that, but then play and be that productive. That's what competitive greatness is, to be at your best when your best is needed, the love of a great challenge. That's what Ed was, and man, I'm telling you, man, I love that kid. He has a bright future because he has a magnetic personality and an unbelievable spirit.
Panther fans that weren't listening to the game and missed your pregame show, remember I asked you what's his availability, because he did not practice at the arena on Tuesday night. He missed a couple of days of practice because of the ankle. So at that point, as you and I are talking in the pregame, I'm not sure 50-50 whether or not he's even going to play in the ball game. Anyway, with everything you said, he ended up with 9 points, 6 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds, and 2 blocked shots. Tenari Lane had 16 points. Another outstanding game, Leslie and Carriwam with 15 points. Jaden Turner, 7 points, 8 rebounds, one of the great offensive rebounds and putbacks I've seen this year, that he came out of nowhere like the Flash.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when he's situated like that, the Flash is a great analogy for that. He came out of nowhere. The possession seemingly was over and dead, and they're going down on the other end of the floor, and here he comes with a red cape on, or whatever color cape, blue cape on, and he gets a rebound and sticks it back in. And that is such a game-changing play to get an offensive rebound bucket. And I'll say it again, that I feel like with Jaden on our team, it's like I have eight Georgia State players on the court at one time, and he's situated like that. It is phenomenal to see.
Georgia State had only 6 turnovers, did a great job taking care of the basketball in that environment, shot 39% from the floor in the first half, came out, shot 50% in the second half. Big difference. The other number that I always keep up with, and it reared its ugly head a little bit on Saturday against Miami of Ohio. Louisiana had 6 offensive rebounds in the first half. They finished with 9, which means Georgia State, did a great job keeping them off the glass in that second half, which was a big part of why what happened.
You know, to go even deeper, I thought they, if my memory served me correctly, in the first 4 minutes of that game, Dave, I think they had 4 of those offensive rebounds. So the last 36 minutes, of play, they had 5 offensive rebounds. That is an amazing feat. And largely one of the reasons we was able to win the game, we allowed them a one shot at the bucket majority of their possessions, and we had pretty good offensive possessions on our end of the floor. And again, defensive rebounding is a huge key for our group that we're going to keep emphasizing.
The guy that we were keeping an eye on, Kobe Julian, had 28 points. Great night for him. The great part for Georgia State, 20 of those came in the first half. He was really somewhat of a non-factor in the second half.
He is a matchup nightmare. He's got great size. He's got great skill. He's a smart basketball player. He's a physical basketball player, and we had no answer for him in the first half. But I do think the multitude of guys we had having a shot at him, we had a team defensive concept in the second half more so than anything else. And we was able to get him contained a little bit. You never ever really completely shut down players like that who's probably going to be in the running for player of the year. But for us to have that second half response to him mauling us in the first half, I thought it was a testament to our guys standing up straight and, taking on that challenge. And I've challenged our guys quite a bit, and they stood up to that one.
Joe Charles had a double-double, 15 points, 11 rebounds. Seems like most of his points, though, were perimeter shots.
Yeah. He is their version, going into the game, he was their version of Jaden Turner. He's all over the floor. He's a very good rebounder. He can knock down the open shots. But he was a tough matchup. I fretted a little bit going into that game, just what I thought he brought to the table. But again, I gathered myself and said, you know what, we got a guy just like him, in my opinion, in Jaden, and that was a good matchup. But he's a hell of a ball player, too. They got a really good team. They're well coached.
All right, you probably don't think of things like this. I don't know, I do, as I sat on the bus and got back to the hotel and kind of thought about that game. You're only in your second season at Georgia State. I think that was your best win as a young head coach here at Georgia State.
The way I feel, all of them are my best, I feel like, because you try to establish yourself. But it speaks to the level of growth I think we all have had. To be able to withstand that type of barrage early in the game, to keep our guys level-headed enough, to keep showing up, to keep stepping up through adversity. That's a testament to my coaching staff and the guys we have in our locker room, that this thing is going to turn, and we just got to keep showing up.
All right, so after a great win on the road at Louisiana, Georgia State made their way back to Atlanta, getting ready for the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio in the second game of the annual Sun Belt MAC Challenge. And that game had a little bit of a side story, an interesting twist to it as well for head coach Jonas Hayes. So we're going to come back after this timeout. We'll talk to him about the win over Miami of Ohio, and we'll also take a quick preview of the coming week road games at James Madison. They're currently third in the Sun Belt Conference, and then on the road at Old Dominion in the final road game of the regular season this year for Georgia State. They're currently dead last in the Sun Belt, but still, you got to be careful going into any building on the road. Anyway, we'll talk to Coach Hayes on the other side of this timeout about all that and a whole lot more after these words from Ford and Center Park Credit Union.
Wherever you go this fall, greatness starts in a Ford SUV. That's because Ford Escape, Explorer, and the spirited Bronco Sport SUVs have the power, cargo space, and smart tech you need for tailgating on game day, camping under the stars, fall festivals, romantic dinner dates, concerts, antiquing, pumpkin picking, weekend getaways, school plays. For great offers on these versatile SUVs, see your local Ford dealer today. Greatness starts here.
Center Park Credit Union, the official financial sponsor of GSU football, is proud to be a part of the Georgia State community and the Panther athletics program. Center Park provides members convenient financial services. In addition to online banking, mobile banking, and 7 Metro Atlanta branches, Center Park members have access to 5,000 co-op shared branches and 75,000 surcharge-free ATMs nationwide. To find a location near you, visit online at centerpark.org/contact, and that's park with a C. Not a member? Join today at centerpark.org. At Center Park, we help our members flourish. We're back in the Panther Insider Podcast, driven by Ford. Dave Cohen talking with Georgia State's head basketball coach Jonas Hayes. We broke down the win at Louisiana. Panthers made their way home for the Sun Belt MAC Challenge, and after winning the game on the road earlier this year in Kalamazoo, beating Western Michigan by 7, Georgia State drew the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio in the Sun Belt MAC home game, and they came in, I think, 11-12 and 5-6 in MAC play. Georgia State coming back home with a lot of momentum after the win over the Ragin' Cajuns. The side note in this ball game is the head coach of Miami of Ohio is an old friend of yours. You coached with him and under him until his departure at Xavier and until you arrived at Georgia State.
Yeah, he's a very good friend of mine. He hired me at Xavier, worked with him for 4 years, worked for him for 4 years, and a funny fella, smart as a doggone whip. And it was kind of bittersweet. I was kind of cringing. I was hoping we didn't get the matchup with them for a while. We was matched up with them for a while. And if you go by net rankings, for a minute there we was, that wasn't a matchup. Then the last, week or so, 5 or 6 days, that was our matchup, and they finally announced it. I said, okay, it's not going to be awkward because I got much love for Coach Steele, but it's just what the basketball gods had in store. And I talked to him periodically. That was the first time I physically seen him in quite some time. And again, he's a hell of a coach. He's going to get that thing right, and they're going to have some shooting.
Well, the way it ended at Xavier, and I wasn't there, obviously you were, he exits the program. You take over as the interim the rest of the season, and you lead them to the NIT championship. So there is that twist of history there that you guys were both involved with that last Xavier team that you and he were a part of.
Yeah, it was an amazingly tough situation, Dave, and I just tried to navigate it as best I can. I have a lot of love and respect for Travis. I was placed in that position, and I was simply just trying to land the plane. And we so happened we won the tournament, won NIT, and it was a great experience. But it was a unique and challenging one all at the same time.
I'll leave it at this: if none of that ever happens, you and I may not be sitting here right now talking on the Panther Insider Podcast. Things happen that are out of our control. So
To that, I will say, if you ever want to figure out if God has a sense of humor, try making your own plans. And he has things in store for you that you can't even really conceive. And that's was this case. Never in a million years. But, I can't even really put into words that whole scenario.
All right, so as you look back at it now, your win over Miami of Ohio, you beat them by 20 at the Convocation Center here in town, 73-53, led by 10 at halftime, and obviously plus 10 scoring-wise in the second half.
Yeah, it was a total team effort. I thought we played really, really elite. With elite effort and energy for about 35 minutes of that game, and that's something we've been a consistent thought of ours to be fair to the game, be fair to your teammates, be fair to the program, and give everything you have and leave nothing on the floor, leave nothing on the table. I'll be able to live with the result if you give us every single thing that you have. And let the chips fall where they may, because I do think we have a talented enough locker room that we can go off and be a team that no one wants to face. But you got to do your part. You got to do what you do, control what you can control, and control your effort. That's something we should never have to coach. And I really thought our guys brought it. They paid attention to the details of our scouting report against Miami, Ohio, and I was pleased with the result.
3 guys in double digits, but in the post-game press conference, you emphasized defense. 7 steals, 3 blocks, which, by the way, Dwan Odom had all 3 blocked shots. I think he went from 13 to now 16 blocked shots. No, actually, he had 4 in double digits, but it was defense you were talking about.
Defense has got to be the linchpin, because that will give you a chance to win every single game that you play. Offense could come and go. You can have a good shooting night, bad shooting night, but if you're committed to that end of the ball, you will have a chance every single time that you step over the floor. And we have some offensively gifted guys, but everybody want to play offense. And if you can get a group of men that's in our locker room to understand the importance of bringing it every single night from a defensive perspective, that'll give you a chance regardless of who you play.
For the second consecutive game, Tanari Lane leads the way. He had 17. Lucas Taylor, who was our player of the game on our ESPN Plus and radio broadcast, had 15. I think he had 8 rebounds. Your combined post players, Leslie and Carrium, Edward Demoko, 14, and then 4 and 9 rebounds. They combined for 18 points, 11 boards, just Leslie and Edward.
Yeah, those guys are warriors, and those guys are leaving everything they have in their tank. They're leaving it out on the floor. They're leaving no stone unturned. They're leaving no doubt. And it's with that effort that I think that's kind of galvanized our locker room. And both of those guys got magnetic personalities. People like to be around them. They're great teammates. But for those guys to kind of lead the effort and energy piece with some intelligence, I think that has been a huge, huge deal in how we feel after the last 4 games, certainly after the last 2.
Dwan Odom, 10 points, 3 rebounds, dished out 6 assists, blocked 3 shots.
He's a jack of all trades. He's a fire hydrant with the ball, and when he's playing with that much emotion, that much synergy and energy on the defensive end, he's a tough little hombre.
Nice to put back-to-back wins together after what turned out to be a 6-game losing skid.
Yeah, and the 6 game, even those 6 games, a lot has revealed. The one thing about Ed, I always say this: adversity will reveal a man, introduce a man to himself, and that stretch, Ed became who he is now, and you didn't see it. But he became this consistently emotional leader that he is now. And for me, that speaks volumes, because it's not, people can look at you, oh, he's a great guy when things are going well and it's times of ease and comfort. But it's in times of adversity where a man shows you who you are, shows you who they are, but it also introduces a man to himself. And that's what has gotten me really excited about Ed, is through those times. And I always tell him, it's getting ready to be a crazy story about a lobster. How do you think a lobster grows out of its shell? Well, if it never feels uncomfortable to grow out of that shell, it never grows. The only way it grows, it gets too large for the shell it's in, and it gets uncomfortable. And through that adversity, you shed that old, shell to allow another one to grow in its place. And that's what has happened through that adversity. Ed was uncomfortable, and he kind of stepped forward and being his emotional guy. And I couldn't be more thankful for it.
People forget he's a sophomore. He came in as a freshman last year, We end up going 10-21. It was a tough season. It was a long season. Granted, it was eye-opening for him coming in and playing Division I basketball. You played. Sometimes it takes a while for guys to kind of get their feet underneath them and learn what it means to be and make a contribution at a Division I program.
Yeah, he's learned that, and we put a lot on his plate from the day he stepped foot on campus. He played a lot last year, and he had to cut his teeth on the fly. And this year, same thing again. He's kind of still learning and adjusting. And in February, man, I'm telling you, a light is going on in his head that I don't think will ever be turned off again.
All right, back on the road, as we were talking off air, it seems like for every one home game we play, I feel like we play 4 road games. It seems like we've been on the road most of the season. For longtime Georgia State fans, this is a reminder of the old Colonial Athletic Association days when we used to make multiple trips to Virginia every year. Felt like we were always on an airplane. This road trip is James Madison on Thursday night in Harrisonburg, then down to Norfolk, Virginia to take on the Monarchs of Old Dominion. Right now, Coach JMU third in the Sun Belt Conference, 22-3. They've got the best overall record. They're 9-3 in league play, and they have won 4 straight.
Yeah, this is going to present another challenge, but also at the same time, Dave, this is an amazing opportunity. It is an amazing opportunity for our team to go up in James Madison's building and compete. What a lot of people think is the top level league, top level team in our league, and it's a phenomenal opportunity.
Well, they're right behind Appalachian State and Troy. Michael Green, Terrence Edwards, T.J. Bickerstaff, guys I know you're familiar with. We'll see them on Thursday. A good challenge there. Old Dominion, they're at the bottom of the league right now. 6-19, 2-10 in league play at this recording. They have lost 3 straight, and we did see them earlier this season here in Atlanta.
Yeah, it don't matter who you play. We could be playing those guys on the blacktop. It is hard as I don't know what to win games on the road. And, again, I'm not putting myself mentally at Saturday yet, but we're going to approach these games like they're the Super Bowl. And we'll be prepared from a mental standpoint, but we have to got to be prepared physically.
Nice to go on the road, though, with a 2-game winning streak.
Always, yes.
All right, Coach, appreciate it. Congrats on the wins this past week. Always good to get together and chat Georgia State basketball, and we'll see you in Virginia.
Thanks, Dave, and let's go Panthers.
All right, I want to thank Georgia State's head basketball coach, Jonas Hayes. A reminder, Panthers are back on the 21st of February with Coastal Carolina. Tickets available by calling the Georgia State ticket office at 404-413-4020. or online at georgiastatesports.com. Tell them you were listening to the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. And we're back talking Georgia State basketball again next week on the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. This is Dave Cohen saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the GSU Convocation Center. And as always, go Panthers!